top 5 defense and top 5 offense most impactful players for NC State football in 2024.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Thursday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Today, we're going to get into our top 5 most impactful players for this upcoming season, both on defense and then also on offense. In this first portion of the show, we will start on defense. Kenton, I'll let you go first. We're gonna work backwards from 5 down to 1. Give me your number 5 most impactful player on defense.
Well, before we get into the list, we want to let you all know that this is not about who we think the best players are. This is not about who we think is the most talented or who will have the best year. The key here is impactful, meaning whether or not they are really good or really bad matters a lot, meaning they will have an impact. Their performance will have an impact one way or another on this team. Again, what they do. So let's keep that in mind. So number 5 is, for my defensive list, is Sean Brown. The safety convert down to a linebacker. He is phenomenal. He loves coming downhill, getting physical. He filled in last year as the third safety and looked pretty good doing it. Obviously, there were some moments where you were like, eesh, that's a little tough. But by and large, he was all over the place. He was the second in command at times to Peyton Wilson in terms of being around the ball and being a headhunter. And so Sean Brown is a definitive number 5 for me.
Now, another quick disclaimer before I give my number 5. Kenton and I have not shared our lists with each other, and I think they're going to end up being very similar at the end here. My number 5 is Brandon Cisse. We talked a lot about him just this past week, and he's stepping into a massive role as the starter opposite of Aiden White this year. We saw Cisse struggle earlier in the season as just a true freshman, and then by the end of the season, he was making tons of impactful play all over the field. And with Shaheem Battle moving on to the NFL, that leaves the spot open for just a sophomore, Brandon Cisse, to step up and become a massive part to this defense. And shocker here, Aiden White will be later in my list, but the way that Aiden White shuts down one side of the field, a lot of teams are going to be looking to attack Brandon Cisse and hopefully exploit some lack of experience there. That's where Cisse can really make a name for himself, and that's why I have him at number 5. Kenton, number 4, who you got?
My number 4 is very easily Brandon Cleveland, and let me explain to you why. He is the middle of this defense. He is going to be expected to take on a pretty decent load. He's going to be expected to take on a pretty decent snap count in the upcoming year, and he is your first line of defense. So if we an inability to perform from Cleveland, that could bode extremely poorly for this defense, especially because offensive lines are going to have the ability to climb to our linebackers and get in their face right away. A linebacking core that we're already saying, hey, this may be the weak link of the group, and they may need a little bit of help.
And bear with us, as Kenton's Wi-Fi sounds like it's been sacked by Brandon Cleveland, but he had Brandon Cleveland at 4 there. I have Sean Brown at 4. Piggybacking a little bit off of what you've already discussed with Sean Brown, I can't wait to see what he looks like at the linebacking position this year. Obviously stepped into a role as a safety last year due to some injuries and really shined back there in the safety position in the secondary. Now moving into a new role this year, I'm sure he's put on a lot of muscle to prepare for all the hits that he's going to have to deliver there as a linebacker, but all the athleticism that he really put on display last year, again, I can't wait to see how that translates for him to be in a new position under Tony Gibson. We talked a lot about NC State not adding another linebacker as the spring portal waged on. That would make me infer that he feels good about the development of Sean Brown. So if Tony Gibson trusts in Sean Brown, then we absolutely do as well. Supreme athlete. I think he's going to shine, so I have him at 4. Kenton, who do you got for number 3?
Number 3 is Brandon Cisse for me. Let me tell you why. Number 3 is the guy who plays opposite of number 3. How ironic, right? But here's the deal. The reality for Cisse is this. With Aiden White telling offenses, hey, the right side of the field is closed for Shop, guess who they're going to be targeting? The other cornerback, which is very likely to be Brandon Cisse. Teams are going to target him, but I say that how he holds up has a massive impact on how this season goes. If he and Aiden White turn out to be one of the best, if not the best outright cornerbacking duo in the nation, NC State will be in Charlotte. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. However, if he falters, if he's easily exposed, if he looks like he needs a ton of help over the top, that's not going to go well because Tony Gibson's defense leaves corners on an island. That's part of the deal. That's just part and parcel for playing in this defense. So Brandon Cisse and his performance will have an immense impact on this defense, and I think that he will be just fine kicking behind and taking names there.
So at number 3, I have Brandon Cleveland. So we are, in fact, doing the 3-man weave here from 5 down to 3. I'll probably reiterate some of the things that you may or may not have heard from Kenton. Again, please bear with us. We're working through some Wi-Fi struggles, but I have Brandon Cleveland at 3. This is shaping up to be a massive year for Brandon Cleveland. And another guy that we saw glimpses of last year, whenever he was on the field, he was making instant impacts. And he is a monster to be dealt with on this defensive line. Him being in a primarily starting role this year, I think he's going to go off. And like Kenton mentioned, it was very good to add that depth behind him with Chaz Wallace from Colorado. That just gives Brandon Cleveland more legs. He'll be able to rest a little bit more to have a guy that can come in and hold the position down, so then Cleveland can come right back in and tear it up. But I'm looking for Cleveland to be an absolute force on this defensive line. He is my number 3. Down to our last 2. Kenton, who do you have at number 2?
I've got Davin Vann because he's our do-everything defensive lineman. Here's the thing about Davin Vann. He can play inside, he can play outside, but I truly, truly believe that his ability to do all of the things that he does at a high level that has to shine this year. It has to shine because traditionally the linebackers have carried us. This year, I don't think that'll be the case. I think if we depend on the linebackers to carry us, oh boy, we're going to be in for a long season defensively. So Davin Vann, much like Brandon Cleveland, are going to have to be really good at what they do. And the reason that I put Davin Vann instead of some other guys here is because most other guys in our defensive line rotation right now are specialists of some sort. They specialize in doing one thing. They do one thing extremely well, but they don't have that repertoire where it's you can be inside, you can be outside, you can play the 3, you can play 9, you can play 7. For those of you who don't know, those are different numbers as in terms of alignment, like how many gaps or how far you are from the ball. And in short, Davin Vann can do it from all these different places. That definitely helps out in terms of the blitz package and the different things that Gibson wants to do in terms of exotic blitzes. So Davin Vann is my number 2 because if he falters, if he is not good, if we see struggles from him this year, I don't think there's a world where he struggles and our defensive line is good.
I have Aiden White at 2. As you might imagine, he'd be somewhere around the top of this list. We all know what he is, and he is one of the top corners in the entire country. And even though we all know this as NC State fans, I don't know if he gets enough love nationally because I remember we were down in Charlotte last July for the ACC kickoff. And again, I told you, Aiden White at that time had just under 500 coverage snaps without a single touchdown allowed. Then he went and played another full season and still did not allow a touchdown in coverage. So now I think entering the 2024 season, he's like just south of 900 snaps in a row without allowing a touchdown. That's absurd. That means that teams are not going to be wanting to throw at him very much. That ups the ante for Brandon Cisse. But again, that speaks to the impact of Aiden White on this defense. And when a team does try and go Aiden White's way, more than likely he's going to have a play on the ball, whether he's swatting it down or he's picking it off and going the other way. So Aiden White, undoubtedly one of the most impactful players on this defense. I have him at number 2. And Kenton, your number 1 most impactful defensive player is?
My number 1 is a huge cop-out. It's the Mike linebacker. Whoever our starting Mike linebacker is, they have to be good. This team will very much so depend on how well they can perform because the reality is I'm not expecting Sean Brown to be Peyton Wilson, and nobody should. That's a fool's errand to try to replace Peyton Wilson 1-for-1. However, the play of our Mike linebacker has to pick up. It has to be at the level to where you can say, hey, I feel good about this position, and let me tell you why. When you look at both of the at the tackle over runs that scored touchdowns against NC State last year, one against Notre Dame, one against Duke, there is definitely a moment in both of those plays where you look and say, what is the Mike linebacker doing? Okay. Now that's important because, again, these guys, the Mike is going to matter so much because in this style of defense, in this 3-3-5, they always matter. That guy has to be able to, at minimum, shut down everything tackle to tackle, at minimum. And so the play of our Mike linebacker, if he's good, this defense will be good. If he's not, I don't care if it's Cade Fordham. I don't care if it's Devon Betty. And I would love to see somebody, whoever it is, whoever is going to be the guy getting the majority of the snaps at that position, they are going to be critical to the success or to the detriment of this team.
My number one, I have Davin Vann. So we had kind of the same circulation of 5 players here. I have Davin Vann at the 1 spot. I can remember back early last year when we played UConn in the first game, Davin Vann had missed a gap assignment, and it led to like a 60-yard touchdown on the ground for UConn. And I believe at the time, that was our locked-on look of the week because it was so significant. He caused a fumble that next week against Notre Dame, and then there on out, he went on to have a very strong season, but I do think because of our formation in the 3-3-5, our defensive linemen really kind of fly under the radar a lot of times. And whether it is Red Hibbler or Brandon Cleveland or Davin Vann in this case, they do a lot more than what meets the eye. They're setting the edge a lot of times, and that's what makes NC State such a good rush defensive team. And so a lot of the emphasis is placed on linebackers in the secondary in the pass game. I don't think our defensive linemen get enough love, and Davin Vann is one of the most impactful players on the field every single time we're out there on defense. So for me, that is number one. We're going to get into our top 5 most impactful offensive players in just a moment after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. So with Gametime's last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Using their last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they got it, all on an app that is super easy to use. When you toggle their all-in pricing feature, you get the total upfront with 0 surprises at checkout. And using their panoramic views from your seat, you can know exactly what to expect when you're sitting down before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Middle portion of our Thursday show. Now time for our top 5 most impactful players on offense. Kent, I'll let you start again on this one. Number 5, who you got?
Number 5 is number 5, Noah Rogers. And let me tell you why. Noah Rogers is, to me, supposed to be a game changer. He's supposed to set the table offensively. What do I mean by that, right? He's got to be the guy that he is so good it causes or it forces defenses to have to adjust to him. And I say that because we saw what KC did last year with no pressure release valve. There wasn't one. There was just him. It was just all pressure all the time. It was teams doing their best to wipe out number 10 from the game plan because if he's not open, don't worry about it. Again, with all due respect, nobody is going to be open enough to get some big completions there. Noah Rogers is going to be a guy that, if he sets this thing up to where you've got to watch out for him at all times, you've got to, I'm not saying that he has to be Biletnikoff award finalist level, but if he is in that all ACC discussion, this offense will be exponentially better than it will be if we look at the opposite, which is why I also say, again, he's most impactful because if he performs poorly, that then throws off, I believe, the whole synergy and chemistry of what I believe creates the best potential offense possible. Unless somebody else steps up in a major way, the reality is that puts all of the onus and all of the defense's attention back on KC. It may even add additional pressure to Wesley Grimes or whoever's that third receiver, and that's just not what you want to see. So Noah Rogers is my number 5.
Number 5, I have Anthony Belton. And in the beginning of last year, the offensive line struggled. There's really no other way to say it. As the year waged on, they became more of a cohesive unit, and Anthony Belton was a big reason for a lot of that. This is a bag year for Belton. We were kind of worried that he'd be moving on to the NFL after last year. He's coming back, and he's going to make himself a lot of money on this offensive line. And he is just one piece to the larger puzzle of really everything we're trying to accomplish on offense this year. They always say it starts up front. It literally does with Anthony Belton. So I have him at number 5. Number 4, Kenton, who you got?
Well, let's keep the buffet buster streak going. I got Jacarius Peak. He has to be good because when you saw what injecting him in the lineup did last year, that's his impact. That's the difference between us saying, we can run it sometimes, to quarterback runs being a major feature of our offense. One of the biggest differences was Jacarius Peak. When he was rolling and grading guys down, the running game looked totally different from what it did early in the year. And again, if he performs poorly, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to sustain an offense like that. You look at all of our best offensive output games, Virginia Tech, UNC, those types of games, and you will see the offensive line was folding dudes. They were folding cats' laundry while they were still in it. You understand? That's what has to happen if this team is going to be really good. So Jacarius Peak is my number 4 most impactful.
Number 4 for me, I got Zeke Correll. He's the Notre Dame transfer center, a new piece to this offensive line. I know he had a little bit of an injury this spring, missed a lot of time in the spring, but I think just recently he's been cleared, which is really good news. He's got to be a leader of this offensive line. Obviously, you lose Dylan McMahon to the NFL. You're going to need a new centerpiece to step up and lead these big guys because, again, it all does start up front. He's got a really good pedigree coming from Notre Dame. All the media bits I've heard from Zeke, I've loved everything he's had to say. He really personifies leadership, and I think that he steps in and instantly gets the culture here that we've been building at NC State. Really appears to be a hand-in-the-dirt type of guy, blue collar. I think he'll fit in very well, and I think he's going to be really impactful at the center position. So I have him at number 4. Number 3.
Well, let me say, your number 4, my number 3 is Zeke. Either way,
keep doing this.
Is because if you don't think that a good center who can snap the ball correctly is important, ask Ohio State and ask Alabama.
Absolutely.
Ask them how important it is. Ask them how important it is to have a guy that can do a lot from the center position. And I'll tell you what, the other thing that I look at with Zeke in terms of importance, even beyond the snaps and whether or not the snaps are good, again, I believe that the key to NC State's running game is not Waters, is not Smothers, is not Raphael, is not Duke Scott, it's none of these guys. It is the big fellas. It is the elephants on parade. If the big boys are not leading, we are going to have a problem. Let's see if Grayson continues the streak of these big fellas in his next prediction. But Zeke Corral is my number 3.
Number 3, I actually have Grayson McCall. So the quarterback.
Interesting.
And this might surprise some folks. What do you mean? You don't have him at 2 or 1? I have him at number 3. And again, obviously, being the quarterback, he is very important to this offense this year. But kind of the same things I said when he first committed here to NC State. We don't really need him to be Superman. We just need him to make all the throws that we need him to make, improvise a bit, be a leader, and just be the ultimate team guy wherever we need one. Whether that's improvising for a scramble for X amount of yards, whether it's taking it yourself, being tough. He is a really tough quarterback, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that, despite having some injuries at Coastal last year. Again, another guy, I've loved everything I've heard from him in the media. He truly seems to understand what he was brought here to do. And so he is obviously, again, very important to this offense. It seems that he's gelling well with the other guys. He seems to immerse himself as a leader and as a really good teammate. So I'm looking forward to a great year from Grayson McCall. We kind of go as he goes to an extent. I think our skill players might be a little bit more important, but he's a really good quarterback, and I think he's going to prove it here as well. I have Grayson McCall at 3. All right, Kenton, number 2. Where are we going?
I'm upset that you broke the streak, Grayson, because the elephants on parade, we almost had 5 straight picks of big guys.
Just the offensive line, 1 through 5.
we were one short, but I got Big Belton. Big Cadillac is going to be crucial. Like Sandra Bullock said in The Blind Side, the first thing you pay for is the house. The second thing you pay for is the house insurance, and that's what Anthony Belton is. He is the protector of that blind side. And here's the reality of why I put Belton here. If he can make that bag, because we talked about him having a bag year last year, and he did all right. There were moments where there was something left to be desired, but there were also moments where he looked good. If he is dominant, this offense will dominate. If he is piss poor, this offense will be piss poor until they replace him. That's just the reality. I have Anthony Belton at number 2 because, again, I think that not only when you talk about the running game and what that does if he's rolling is good, but you also talk about the passing game and the ability to give Grayson McCall time from that blind side where he doesn't get happy feet, he doesn't get jittery because he knows he's safe. Big Belton has to be my number 2.
At number 2, and here I go talking about him yet again, I have Justin Jolie, the UConn transfer tight end, just truly a matchup nightmare. I think in terms of players I'm most excited to watch, he might be number 1 on that list. But again, a freak of nature at the tight end position, but he's so athletic, he just feels like a really big wide receiver. Led the country in broken tackles and contested catches as a tight end last year at UConn. When you're looking at our offense as it stands now, when you have a Noah Rogers and a Wesley Grimes, a healthy stable of running backs, you're returning KC Concepcion, and somehow you still have to guard Justin Jolie, I have no earthly idea how teams are going to try and get that done. So I think when we're able to exploit that week in and week out, I have a lot of confidence that Robert and I will really turn up the heat on some defenses and just let Justin Jolie run free for probably a large amount of touchdowns. I think he's going to be a very impactful piece of this offense. So I have Justin Jolie at 2. And to cap this off, Kenton, number 1 most impactful offensive player, who you got?
It's got to be the guy that's most impactful to this podcast, his name mate here, Grayson McCall. Let me tell you something. This is very simple. You're right. Grayson McCall doesn't have to be Superman. But here's the question. What if he is?
What if he is?
What if he is, right? And I always talk about the 3 categories of quarterbacks. Quarterbacks that you win in spite of, meaning like this guy stinks, but we'll find a way. Quarterbacks that you win with, meaning he doesn't hurt us. He doesn't make those plays that leave you like, oh, my God, this guy is phenomenal. He's just doing his job, which is enough, which is more than a lot of quarterbacks say. That's fine. And then there's a quarterback you win because of, where you say, hey, I don't know. We didn't block anybody on that play, but this kid is a freak. He made it happen. Or, hey, we gave him a clean pocket, and boy, I'll tell you, I couldn't expect too many other quarterbacks to make that throw, and yet here we are. Whichever one of those Grayson is will have an extreme impact on this offense because I believe the only way that he doesn't have a great impact one way or another if he's the quarterback you win with. However, there's a great chance that if he plays extremely well, he ends up in New York and NC State ends up in Charlotte. There's a chance that if he ends up playing poorly, we may say it's CJ Bailey time a little early.
We talked about it a couple weeks ago. I don't know if Grayson McCall's stock is as high as it probably should be because I do believe if everything clicks the way that we think that it could, he very well could end up in New York. But my number 1 most impactful offensive player, perhaps the biggest returnee of this offense, it's KC Concepcion. And some of you may be wondering, well, we added all these new pieces and KC's still the most impactful player. Yes, I do believe that to be true. And let me tell you why. The tape is very obviously out on KC by now. He was a freshman All-American, led our team in virtually everything offensively last year because he was seemingly the only guy that we could routinely count on. So, yes, we do have a lot of new offensive weapons, but teams are very clearly going to have to account for KC at all times as well. Otherwise, we can just continue to burn them using KC to do a little bit of everything. But this is where his true impact, I think, really comes in. Because if teams pay a little bit too much attention to KC, boom, you got Noah Rogers on a streak. You use some funky formations. Oh, I think KC might run a sweep here. Nope, it's a draw going the other way, and Jordan Waters just broke you down for 45 yards. KC can run. He can catch.
He can pass, as they said in Friday Night Lights.
And he can pass. He's a Swiss Army knife, as we discovered last year. There's so much potential I think he can still tap into as just a sophomore here at NC State. And I think a lot of the offseason recruiting can be attributed to his impact he had on this team last year. People want to play with a talent like KC Concepcion. I know his younger brother is interested at NC State further on down the line. That can be attributed to impact. He's just a do-it-all guy and one of the most electrifying players in all of college football. So for me, KC remains at the top, the number one most impactful player on offense. As always, let us know what y'all think. Give us your top 5 most impactful players on defense and offense. Drop them down in the comments. I'm going to have to tweet this on Twitter as well, so everyone can get involved with this. We love all the responses that we always get on these types of things, but let us know in the comments what y'all think. Coming up, we're going to round out our Thursday episode discussing the upcoming video game this summer, College Football 25, and what we would love to see involving NC State. After a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple of minutes here on Thursday. Now talking a little bit about the upcoming College Football 25 video game that will be releasing in mid-July. I have been waiting 11 years for this. Kenton's been waiting for 11 years for this. The entire country has been waiting 11 years for this. We're chomping at the bit. More details have been released kind of week by week as to what to expect coming from this game. The graphics have looked absolutely insane. There seems to be direct efforts to include as much detail as humanly possible. I've heard that South Carolina will have Sandstorm in the game, which is a key part to their atmosphere down there in Columbia. All the towels waving, then you hear Sandstorm come on. That'll be really cool. I understand that Mo Bamba, the song, kind of likening that delay of game penalty up at Penn State when they hosted Michigan just some years ago. The atmosphere for these games is supposed to be absolutely incredible. However, we've yet to see literally anything involving NC State as far as the trailer, leaks, what to expect. Absolutely nothing. So we're kind of coming into this thing cold. What are some things that you would love to see included for NC State in this video game?
The thing that I want to see, give me the cannons and the howling at every touchdown. I need that in my life. I don't want it. I need it. I need it the way that we all need air. I need it the way that we all need water. I need it on a biblical level. The reality is I need that in my life a lot. I really want to see every touchdown, boom, cannons, give me the howling, give me all of it. I'd love to see it.
Some of the coolest details I've heard released are that teams have been giving audio files to EA Sports of what you typically hear during a home game atmosphere. So for NC State in particular, obviously every single one of us would love nothing more than to hear Wolfpack. Like, could you imagine playing somebody and you hear that as you're driving down the field? That'd be electric. That'd be so cool. But another thing, and this is probably asking for a little bit too much, how cool would it be to hear Wolfpack fans, it's third down? Like, that'd be awesome.
Can we acknowledge Grace's commitment to the bit right now? This is theater kid level of commitment to these bits. This is why he's the most important to the show.
This is 11 years of waiting for some realism at Carter Finley Stadium, playing on the PlayStation. But I fully expect the stadium to be pristine. The new video board is going to look awesome in this game. We don't really have as many crowd traditions as maybe like at Tennessee as they checkerboard the stadium, but it would be cool to see us do like a true blackout where we get 100% participation in the crowd. That would be something that's really cool. But just hearing the fight song again on the PlayStation, having our new updated uniforms will be really cool. I cannot wait to see what NC State looks like in this game, and I can't wait to get my hands on a controller, throwing bombs to KC, Noah Rogers, and the whole gang. But if you have any ideas on what you would like to see included for NC State in this upcoming video game, drop them down in the comments. Would love to hear input on this as well. Perhaps you see it in the near future. I heard EA Sports is very receptive to any ideas about these types of things coming down the line. But again, drop your thoughts down in the comments. maybe if you want to play against Kenton and I this summer, we can touch on that later on down the line. We'll give you our gamer tag. I think that'd be pretty cool to involve y'all in this new upcoming game as well. But that'll do it for us here on Thursday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments in the comment box. Give us your top 5 most impactful defensive and offensive players. I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of those. And if you have not already, mash that subscribe button. We will see you all tomorrow on Friday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.